This segment you are about to listen to is a snippet from my book, The Flat Earth Manifesto, which is currently in the process of being written. God willing, this book will be the most comprehensive treatise ever written on the subject of flat Earth when it is complete. It will touch on many topics: the science, the historical documentation, the philosophy, the scriptural support for the flat Earth, and the history of space as an industry, just to name a few. If you are interested in learning more, subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more updates about the book. Peace and God bless.
All right, peace to you, ladies and gentlemen. How are you? Now, I apologize for my voice in this video. I've been sick for the last few days, so I've just been hacking away and coughing, and my throat is kind of scratched up, but I still think I can muster up enough effort and energy to read this section of the Flat Earth Manifesto. So, I've been inspired to make this video or to read this specific section because one of my teachers, somebody who, at least intellectually, I have a lot of respect for, Drake, the Southern Israelite. You can check out his channel. It's called the Southern Israelite. He's an incredible scholar in many respects, and now he has turned his attention towards trying to refute the Quran, which is impossible because it's the word of God. I don't know, I've followed him for years, and he's generally stayed away from, I guess, talking about Islam. He's more dealt with the problems of Christianity and atheism, but now he's deciding to go towards Islam, and I guess he's going to go through the various sects and creeds of Islam and try to refute those. And that's fine. I don't care about these different sects and creeds of Sunni and Shia. That doesn't, I don't follow any of those. I'm a Quran alone Muslim, more or less. I follow what the Quran says. He's going to show that essentially these sects, and he's going to show, yeah, that's right, the Sunnis, the Tahawi Creed, these guys follow Greek metaphysics and Greek philosophy and Neoplatonism. That's the root of their ideology. And it's amazing because I've already dealt with this completely, and I'm just going to deal with this section, or I'm going to read off this section from the Flat Earth Manifesto. It's showing the true nature of God. So I'm kind of preemptively going to refute Drake because, once again, you can refute all the creeds you want, but once you direct your attention towards the Quran, that's my specialty. My specialty is not all these different sects. My specialty is the Quran. And the Quran does not teach Greek metaphysics, okay? Now, what you guys need to understand, what I've learned from him and what I've seen also while studying Islam, because he hasn't talked much about Islam historically, is excuse me. So, with Judaism, Christianity, the Eastern religions, and Islam, you will find that the majority of the world, what they have done, these major mainstream religions, is they have taken the holy books, the Word of God. They have taken the Bible, the Old Testament, so-called the New Testament, the Quran, and they have strained it through this metaphysical understanding. They have strained these holy books through this Greek philosophical understanding, which is completely foreign to the scriptures, which has led them to have a certain view of God, which is not in the Quran or the Bible. Most people nowadays, when you talk to them, even if you go to the mosque and you talk to the theologian, you talk to the sheikh or the imam or whoever, their understanding of God is ridiculous. It's this idea that God is some abstract universal principle. God is like everywhere, in all places, at all times. He just exists everywhere. He's like this universal, almost like a pantheistic understanding of God. And this, again, it comes from Greek metaphysics. This is more or less the Parmenides doctrine of the monad. It's just one. The world is one substance. And the reason I discuss this in the Flat Earth Manifesto is because it has everything to do with the Flat Earth issue. Because because of the globe Earth model, these people are kind of forced into believing this view of God. And I'm going to go into that in the reading. And really, and Newton believed this as well. I discussed that. I learned a lot of that from Drake, that Newton, he more or less believed in this pantheism or panentheism, that God is like this universal principle, this universal energy we all swim through. That is not the Quranic or the biblical teaching, or at least the Quranic teaching. That is what I'm going to focus on here. The Quranic teaching, ladies and gentlemen, is that God Almighty is a literal physical being. He is a literal physical concrete being with a spatial location. He exists somewhere, okay? He has a finite spatial location, not finite power, not I'm not going to, I even steer away from the word infinite because infinite comes with a lot of metaphysical baggage. He doesn't have more or less limited powers. He can do as he wills within the creation, of course, but he has a limited spatial location. He has a spot where he dwells, okay? He is a literal physical, a king who sits on his physical throne above the flat earth and watches over us like one big cosmic fishbowl. That is the teaching of, that is the doctrine of God according to the Quran. And I'm going to show that to you right now and preemptively respond to Drake in case he decides to turn his attentions towards the Quran and maybe teach that the Quran teaches Neoplatonism, because it does not. So we will begin the reading where I'm going to show you conclusively this is the understanding of God that the Quran teaches, that he is a literal physical king sitting on his throne above the flat earth. You know, where is God? Where is God? He is upwards. He is literally upwards. So we begin the reading. Excuse me. The next and final point I would like to get into is the nature of God according to the Quran and how it relates to the flat earth. I believe that a very large number of people in this world are misled into a false understanding of who and what God is, and that this mistake is intimately tied to the issue of cosmology. A lot of religionists from all backgrounds, be it Jewish, Christian, or so-called Muslim, seem to have a view of God where he is some kind of an impersonal, universal energy that pervades all things, who himself has no real spatial location. This mystical, quasi-pantheistic conception of God is not found anywhere in the scriptures, but nevertheless must be adopted if you believe that the globe is true. So this is the natural conclusion of the globe. You can't adopt the true Quranic stance that God is a literal physical concrete being if you believe in the globe. It forces you to adopt this kind of pantheistic, abstract, Greek metaphysical view, and I'll show you why. Continuing the reading. If I am asked by somebody, where is God? My response to that question is simply me looking at the inquirer and pointing upwards. God is literally above our heads. This statement of mine is supported by the model of creation that I believe in. So somebody asks me, where is God? I point upwards. He's above the heavens. Where is the heavens? The heavens is above our head. God is literally the highest being ever. He's the highest. We call him the Most High not for no reason. We call him the Most High because he is literally and symbolically the Most High. There is none higher than him. Everything else looks upwards towards him. So he is the Most High. So where is God? He is upwards. Continue with the reading. But if the globe earther is asked, where is God? He faces a lot of challenges. All directions in his model are relative. Remember the theory of relativity, that all directions, all frames of reference are relative. There is no universal objective frames of reference. This is getting into Einstein's theory of relativity. So all directions in his model are relative. There being no real definition of up or down, because everybody lives on the surface of a globe that attracts us inward. So, like when you're on the globe, if you're on the top, quote unquote, top of the globe in North America, you know, up and down is relative to the center. This is an old model. I'm talking about this in my section on the history of the globe. This is what the church has believed historically. The church has believed historically the earth is a globe, but they were geocentrists for a while until, the modern world, where they defected to heliocentrism. However, they were historically geocentrists, and this goes back to, again, the Greek philosophers. If I'm not mistaken, Parmenides believed that the earth is a globe. Plato definitely believed the earth is a globe. You can see that in his Timaeus. Aristotle believed that the earth is a globe. Pythagoras believed that the earth is a globe. And they all understood that up and down, according to the globe model, is relative. It's, like somebody on the bottom of the globe, in their theory, Australia, his down is my up and my up is his down. There is no objective concept of up or down. It's all just, relative to the observer. It's ridiculous. So continuing on, he faced a lot of challenges. All directions in the model are relative. There being no definition of up or down. Everyone lives on the surface. If he says, so the globe earther, if he says that God is upward, then that is only true for half of the world. If God is above the people in North America and Europe, then properly speaking, he is beneath the people of Australia and South Africa, because their down is the northern up, vice versa, the other way around. In the relativistic model, which is the globe, God's habitation is moved to being below the feet of some men. This is unacceptable and blasphemous. So, again, with the globe, if I'm living in North America, if God is above me, then that by definition means that people, they say this as a, people down under in Australia, those who are in Australia, God is literally beneath them. God is beneath their feet if God is above me, because according to the relativistic model, all directions are relative. You're saying God is beneath the feet of some men. This is ridiculous and blasphemous. So continuing on. Because of this inherent quality of the globe, it being directionless, they must regress into an esoteric, pagan, Spinozian idea of the creator, which turns God into a vague, abstruse, and abstract principle that essentially exists everywhere and nowhere at the same time. So they are forced into this by their model. They can't put God in any specific direction because that puts him below other people. They have to follow relativity through and just say God is this abstract universal principle. Continuing. It makes the whole concept of God devoid of meaning, because if his essence exists everywhere, in all spaces, at all times, i.e., pantheism, then there is no way to distinguish between that which is God and that which isn't. Everything just becomes God, making the idea meaningless right from the get-go. This pantheistic view is utter heresy, but nevertheless, it is the logical conclusion of a relativistic and directionless universe. In the modern heliocentric model, there is no objective reference point by which we can know where God is. We can only say that God is in such and such a spot relative to something else. But the Quran itself is very clear. According to the statements of the Most High, he is an all-powerful, all-seeing, all-knowing judge who has a particular spatial location. God is not an abstraction, but concrete. His dwelling place is in the highest heaven, which is above us, and up there, like the great and royal ruler that he is, he sits upon the throne and watches over our world like a cosmic fishbowl. He is, in every sense of the word, a king, the only true king, in fact. Despite this understanding of God as a concrete being, supported with no shortages of passage from both the Bible and the Quran, it nevertheless is the idea of God which is most attacked in our culture. When you begin to describe the true nature of the Most High to people, immediately they will start to have images in their head of an old man with long hair and a white beard sitting in the clouds and mock you. This programmed and blasphemous response has been trained into people by the satanic media. Now, interjecting again, this is the single conception of God, the single most understanding of God that is attacked the most vehemently in the modern world. If you ask people they believe in God, most of them are going to say, oh, I believe in a higher power or an energy or nature or whatever they're going to say. But this understand, they're always going to say to, even amongst Christians and Jews and people who call themselves Muslims, the most high-level theologians of the mosque, they're going to say, oh, I don't believe that God is this man in the clouds or this being in the clouds. And of course, we don't believe God is a man, obviously, but that understanding of him being a king in the clouds, that is the most objective understanding. He is literally a king above the clouds. This is the most Quranic and biblical understanding, but it's the most attacked. People see it as Bronze Age, superstitious, ancient world sheep herding mentality, but that is the Quranic stance. And this is the idea of God that is most attacked in the media. It's attacked in all the television shows. I'm going to put up examples right now while I'm reading this. Family Guy, The Simpsons, it's all in the book. Saturday Night Live, they all attack this particular understanding of God, of him being a concrete being in the clouds. And the satanic media attacks it because it is the truth, because Satan is the enemy of God. He is the enemy of all things that are godly and righteous, and he makes sure to attack this particular understanding of God. He makes people think it's ridiculous. And it's not. It's the true understanding. God is a concrete being above the clouds. So, continuing on. Although God most certainly is not a man, and I would never ever condone trying to produce an image of his form, as it is a complete injustice for us mere humans to try and create a quote-unquote artist's impression of the appearance of the Most High, whose holiness, glory, and radiant figure are beyond our comprehension. Even still, the idea of a concrete being sitting on his majestic throne is the correct understanding. And of course, because it is the truth, the entire Luciferian entertainment industry, which has an agenda against all truth, has gone out of their way on many occasions to make jest of this accurate divine king doctrine by creating their own sacrilegious parodies. So here is a photo from Family Guy. Here's another one from Simpsons, and then Saturday Night Live. This is the single understanding of God that is under attack the most. Not the Neoplatonism, not the one, not the monad, not the abstract universal principle, not Gaia, not the universe, not nature. This understanding of God, it is masculine, it is strong. This is the true understanding, and it's under the most attack. So, continuing forward. These above are, there are many more examples of this in entertainment, which I have not included here. But what you see above is the reason why most people abhor the divine king doctrine. When you begin explaining to them the truth about who God is, their minds, which have been hellishly raped by the demon-filled gutter that is the entertainment industry, will recall irreverent images like the ones you see above. When I ask the society around me if they believe in God, I almost always get the following answer from them. I don't believe in God, but I do believe in a higher power. And I've always seen this response as quite odd. To me, it just sounds like a classic distinction without a difference fallacy, because God is the higher power, the highest power, most accurately speaking. When I go on to question them about their strange statement, I will usually get this response. The people who create this unholy sewage, so this stuff you see in the entertainment industry, they're mocking the divine. I call this the divine king doctrine, the concrete being of God, this understanding of the Most High. The people who create this unholy sewage and excrete it on the masses have the infernal blaze to be excited for, which will be their welcoming party in the hereafter. They have had a lot of fun outside, and I think it is about time for them to return back to their home where they rightfully belong. They have a special spot reserved just for them in the lowest and darkest gorges of the flaming abyss, if they do not gravely repent with tears in their eyes of these atrocities, with an intense regimen of fasting, prayer, sackcloth, and ashes upon their heads. When I see these images, so this crap from the entertainment industry, I can almost hear the burning pit and its dreadful howling. But with all of that being said, this is yet another one of the myriad reasons why Flat Earth is so important and why it has completely changed my life. When I came around to accepting this information for the truth that it is, suddenly the prudent fear that I already had within me increased exponentially like I had never before seen. So, when I became familiarized with this concept through Drake, God used Drake to teach me of this non-metaphysical, concrete being of God understanding, he was demonstrating how this is more or less the teaching of the Bible, and I applied that methodology towards the Quran. I saw that this is exactly what the Quran teaches. What the Bible teaches about God is more or less exactly the nature of God in the Quran, and this completely changed my life, and I'll read on to tell you why. Every time I am tempted by Satan to do something which would wrong my soul, I remember that God, the one, the omnipotent, the sovereign ruler, is literally above my head. He's literally above me, watching every one of my actions. I live my whole life with the thought that the king is looking down upon me. God really does become more real and much more terrifying when you know where he is. On the flip side of the coin, it also increases me in hope and courage, because I know as well that the righteous servants of God, who are mercilessly persecuted by this wicked world, all of the injustice and long suffering we endure for saying our Lord is God alone, he who is above sees every last bit of it. So God is above. This has increased me in prudent fear. I know where he is. He's not some made-up thought in my head. Because I know where he is, it gives me a very graphic image of judgment, and it keeps me on the straight path, ladies and gentlemen. All of those followers of Satan have nowhere to hide. We will be vindicated and avenged. The judge is upstairs, and encompasses all that they do upon his earth. The flat earth cosmology, which is the only true cosmology, shows God to be more real and more personal than the mental abstraction of the globe. The model itself points to his dwelling place on high. It reminds you of his constant presence. Now onto the scriptural proofs. So I'm going to read all the Quranic passages showing this. And in this particular section, I talk about God, but God alone, but I'm going to speak also about the angels and the afterlife. This has all been given a Greek metaphysical undertone when none of it is metaphysical. It's all physical and concrete. So we'll start with God, and if more verses come to my mind, I will let you know. So in the name of God, the Almighty and the Merciful. Chapter number 10, verse 3. Your Lord is God, who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, then established himself upon the throne, directing the matter. There is no intercessor save after his leave. That is God, your Lord, so serve him. Will you then not take heed? Chapter 57, verse 4. He it is that created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, then established himself upon the throne. He knows what penetrates into the earth and what comes forth from it, what descends from the heaven, what ascends into it. And he is with you wherever you may be, and God knows what you do. And just as a quick interjection here, ascend and descending from the heaven is not some abstraction. Heaven is above us. That's why you can ascend to heaven. It has a literal, physical, objective direction. That heaven is upwards. Descending is going away from heaven. Ascending is going towards the heaven. You'll find this all over the Quran, ascending and descending from heaven. There's an objective direction as to where heaven is. But continuing with the verses, chapter 2, verse 255, God, there is no God save He, the living, the eternal. Neither slumber nor sleep overtakes Him. To Him belongs what is in the heavens and what is in the earth. Who will intercede with Him save by His leave? He knows what is before them and what is after them. They encompass not anything of His knowledge save what He wills. His throne overspreads the heavens and the earth, and the preservation thereof wearies Him not. And He is the exalted, the great. Chapter 39, verse 75. And wilt thou see the angels surrounding the throne, glorifying with the praise of their Lord, and it will be decided between them with justice, and it will be said, praise belongs to God, the Lord of all creation. Chapter 69, verse 17. And the angels on its side, and there will bear the throne of thy Lord above them that day. 8. So these are verses talking about the throne of God, the literal physical throne. Continuing with the reading. Just as I said above, God sits in His throne. This is a reoccurring theme within the Quran that appears throughout the entire book. If we accept that these verses mean anything at all and are not an esoteric mishmash of confusion, then we accept that it is indicative of a literal concrete being that sits in His royal chair. I have heard many try to reinterpret these unmistakable passages as not being a proof of a literal physical throne that the Most High sits upon, but rather that they are a quote-unquote symbol of God's authority over all things. Most certainly, God has authority over all things. That fact I would never dispute. What I contest against is the interpretation that these verses which you read above, so the ones that I just read you, are somehow not indicative of a corporeal throne which God has created for Himself. There are many other verses in the Quran that God talks about His authority over all things. Chapter 46, verse 33. Have they not considered that God, who created the heavens and the earth, and was not wearied by their creation, is able to give life to the dead? Verily, He is over all things powerful. Chapter 65, verse 12. God, it is He who created the 7 heavens, and of the earth their like, the command descending between them, that you might know that God is over all things powerful, and that God has encompassed all things in knowledge. The fact that there is only one God, and this sole God has full superlative mastery over everything in creation, is a single most emphasized motif within the final revelation. The point is belabored practically on every single page. However, the verses which I have shown you before make specific mention of a throne. So these ones that I just read to you, they talk about God's authority. God's authority is mentioned all over the Quran, but those verses that I just read to you previously, that's not necessarily talking directly about God's authority. It's mentioning His throne, which is related to His authority, but it's mentioning His physical throne. His authority is mentioned all over in the Quran, but these are physical verses. It talks about the angels on the side of the throne, the angels surrounding the throne. They're literally in proximity to His physical throne. His throne overspreads the heavens and the earth. We're told of the literal physical size of His throne. God's throne is massive. It is bigger than the whole of the heavens and the earth, and ultimately God Himself is even bigger than that. Like, God is literally the biggest being ever, and His throne overspreads everything. These are very concrete physical descriptions. Continuing with the reading. So, however, these verses which I have shown you before make specific mention of a throne. They go on to describe things that are in spatial proximity to this throne, so the angels which surround it, and 8 special angels which literally hold it up. So we have right there in chapter 69, verse 17, they bear the throne of thy Lord above them that day 8. So it's literally 8 angels holding the throne of God. The Arabic root word for the word throne is arsh, so ayn, ra, and sheen, which is invariably translated as throne in all of these passages about God, is the same word used in the narrative of Solomon, who is planning to take Queen Sheba's throne and disguise it. Chapter 81, verse 20. So this is, in all over the Quran, it's mentioned as throne. Possessor of power, with the Lord of the throne secure. So it's throne. The word there is arsh in the Quran, in Arabic. And chapter 27, verse 41 through 42, he said, disguise her throne, her arsh for her, and we will see if she is guided or she is not of those guided. And when she came, it was said, is thy throne, is thy arsh like this? She said, as though the same. And we were given knowledge before her, and we were submitting. So this verse talking about Solomon when he snatched Queen Sheba's throne, this is, nobody's going to dispute that this is a physical throne. That's the same word used about God's throne, arsh. So as far as I know, God's throne is a physical throne, just like Queen Sheba's throne was a physical throne. Unless you are ready to admit that Solomon was asking his men the question of who would be able to snatch Queen Sheba's authority and afterwards disguise it, then your interpretation of the word arsh is problematic. The Quran even tells us the size of his literal physical throne, that it is larger than the whole of the heavens and the earth, which it overspreads. It stands to reason as well that if God's throne is so colossal in size, God himself, who sits in the throne, must be even larger. God is, without question, the largest existing thing there ever was and ever will be. His awesome size and outstanding power are truly unfathomable. Chapter 39, verse 37. And when they measured God, not with the measure due him, and the earth altogether will be his handful on the day of resurrection, and the heavens will be folded up in his right hand. Glory be to him, and exalted is he above that to which they ascribe a partnership. Again, another verse indicating the absolutely dwarfing size of God. So this is literal size. The massive heavens and the earth, which us humans have not even begun to explore the bounds of. They all lie, NASA, and they try to make it seem like they figured out the heavens and the earth. They know how big the earth is. It's BS, man. It's total garbage. We don't know how big the earth is. The earth is enormous, and the heavens obviously is bigger than that. And all of that will literally be the handful of God on Judgment Day. The bounds of all of this will be his handful on the day of judgment. So we are given again an indication of the just dwarfing, massive, mogging size of God. Continuing on. Chapter 67, verse 16. Do you feel secure that he who is in the heaven will not make the earth swallow you, the while it shakes? So he was in heaven. Chapter 38, verses 8 through 10. Is it that the remembrance was sent down upon him from among us? The truth is, they are in doubt about my remembrance. The truth is, they have not tasted my punishment. If they have the treasuries of the mercy of thy Lord, the exalted in might, the bestower, or if they have the dominion of the heavens and the earth and what is between them, then let them ascend into the causes. This verse is very interesting. It's a challenge from God. It's a challenge to the deniers. God says that he is in heaven, which we have identified as a region above our heads. So this is all about the Quranic understanding of the heavens. In the previous part of the section, I conclusively prove that the heavens is above our head. God says, in the heavens and on the earth. God says what ascends into heaven. Heavens is above. It's not some abstract principle. Heavens is the sky. Neither is the heaven the afterlife. People say, do you know you're going to go to heaven if you die? No, that's not the correct term. Heaven has historically always meant the sky, the place above us, the region above us, the firmament, the heavenly vault. It's above our head. The proper term for the afterlife, the blissful place in the afterlife is the garden in the Quran. The garden, or if you want to use the word paradise, that's fine, but not heaven. That is a miscategorization. The heaven is the sky above our head. And the heavenly, the layers that are there, which is, according to the Quran, there's 7. So, continuing on. God says that he is in heaven, which we have identified as a region above our heads, because he rhetorically challenges the deniers who have a problem with how he does things to ascend up high into heaven, high enough and address their issues, which of course they are unable to. The highest heaven is the habitation of God, which is matched within the Hebrew Bible. So before I read the verse in the Bible, so God is saying here, or if they have the dominion of the heavens and the earth and what is between them, let them ascend into the causes. God is literally saying, I challenge you. You got a problem with how I do things. Come up here and tell me what to do. And we never, ever, 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 ever can. So God has a literal physical place. He's telling us to get up there and address our issues with him. And we're going to see the blasphemous Fir'aun. He essentially attempted to do this. We're going to continue on with the reading. But first, the verses in the Bible that match this. Deuteronomy chapter 26, verse 15. Look down from thy holy habitation, from heaven, and bless thy people Israel, and the land which thou hast given us, as thou swearest unto our fathers, a land that floweth with milk and honey. Isaiah 66 verse 1. Thus saith the Lord, the heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool. Whereas the house that ye build unto me, where is the place of my rest? So God is saying in these verses, he looks down from his holy habitation, heaven. The heaven is his throne, so heaven is the home of God. And like God, the angels also dwell in heaven, continually giving praises to their king. Chapter 16, verse 49 of the Quran. And to God submits what is in the heavens and what is in the earth, among creatures and the angels. They wax not proud. Chapter 53, verse 26. And how many an angel is there in the heavens? Their intercession avails nothing, save after that God gives leave to whom he wills and is pleased. Chapter 21, verse 19. And to him belongs whoso is in the heavens and the earth, and those in his presence are not too proud for his service, nor do they grow weary. So those who are in his presence, they are near God, they are in proximity to him in the heavens. This last verse says that the angels are in God's presence, just as a human servant might be in an earthly king's presence. That means God is a definite, concrete, spatial location which the angels can come in close proximity to. He is not an abstract universal principle. He is not some platonic form. He is not the monad. He is not the gobbledygook, the mental abstraction. He is real. Also, the fact that this passage says that they praise him, this is, I'll skip over this because it's not necessarily what we're focusing on here. Chapter 40, verse 36 through 37. So this is what I mentioned to you just before about Pharaoh or Pharaoh. And Pharaoh or Pharaoh said, O Haman, build thou for me a tower that I might reach the causes of the heavens, that I might look upon the God of Moses or Musa. But I think him a liar. And thus was made fair to Pharaoh the evil of his deeds, and he was turned away from the path, and the plan of Pharaoh was only in ruin. Pharaoh is literally trying to challenge the God of Musa here by building a high enough tower to see him. In his own delusional hubris, he wanted to confront God, challenge him, and overtake him. Pharaoh knew that God's dwelling place was above, which is why he ordered his servant Haman to commission the construction of an immensely tall tower so that he could, quote-unquote, reach the causes. He wanted to ascend high enough to wage war against the king and his army of angels. So this exists today. This is what the ruling elite are trying to do. Why are these cities that are constantly competing and trying to build these higher and higher towers? This is that same demonic pharaonic tradition existing there. They're trying to wage war against God. They know God is above, and it scares me to even say this, but I'm not saying this because I believe it. I fear God, but these people, they want to go up, ascend into the causes, and literally kill God and be God themselves. They want to wage war against him and his heavenly army. These people are totally delusional. This is the same thing is mentioned in the Tower of Babel story in the Bible. This is in the story of Pharaoh in the Quran. He told Haman to build a high tower and to look literally upon the God of Musa, to challenge him face to face. These people, like, they're trying to build these high towers as high as they can. This is all waging war against the Most High. You can look into Operation Fishbowl, where it's mentioned here in my book. I talk about it, how they were trying to launch high-powered nuclear bombs into the upper levels of the atmoplane. And basically what they were trying to do is, why are they launching these bombs so high? They're trying to break open the firmament and see God and do war against him. These people are delusional. This is the New World Order, okay? He wanted to ascend high enough to wage war against the king and his army of angels. The insane suicidal tendencies of these ruling elite types is nothing short of breathtaking. I believe that this pharaonic desire to wage war against the Most High exists within the men who run this world today. But from a cosmological standpoint, what sense does this make on the globe? Where could Pharaoh possibly be going by building a high tower on the surface of a spinning ball in a realm where there is no up or down? From the perspective of somebody on the other side of the earth, so let's say, just as an example, if Pharaoh is building this tower in North America, from somebody in Australia, Pharaoh would actually be going lower and lower in the wrong direction away from God, right? It just doesn't make any sense because, again, all directions are relative. This makes no sense in the globe model and in this abstract metaphysical understanding of God. As always, the Quran assumes an objective reference point for up and down. Up is towards God, and down is further away from him. The Most High is the absolute frame of reference from which all things are measured. His sight is the absolute frame of reference. The Quranic narrative in its entirety operates upon that assumed premise. Over and over, we read of God sending down the angels. This is all over the Quran, man. Sending down the angels, sending down the blessings, sending down the punishment, sending down the revelation, etc. These are not all just cryptic metaphors, they are literal. God, who is high above, sends down words, signs, and messengers from his heavenly dwelling place. In the whole scheme of creation, there is an objective concept of up and down. To think that God is literally above our heads is instinctual and naturally graved within us. That is why any man, no matter what he believes or he may thinks he believes, whether he be a Christian, a Jew, or Muslim, or anything else, whenever he enters a state of complete helplessness, he cries towards the sky, asking God for help. When man reaches out to the Most High for aid, he either bows his head to the ground in humility or looks up to the sky in desperation. That is, in fact, why we call him the Most High in the first place, because he occupies the highest seat. When the Muslim man prays, he lays out his hands open in front of him with the palms facing up, as if he is ready to receive any blessing that may descend upon him from the heavens. Why do we do that? So, Muslims, I do this as well. I'm sure you've done this. When people pray, they hold their hands out in front of them. Why do we do that? Why do we do that? Once again, because man instinctively knows that God is above him. That is why we look to the sky when we pray, or why the wicked man, an ungrateful man, looks to the sky when he blasphemes God because he feels like God has done some kind of an injustice to him. People will turn their heads upwards and curse, or perhaps even stick their middle finger up, of course, to their own doom. Why does a man do all of these things? So whether he believes or whether he's blaspheming, why are we looking upwards? Because he instinctively knows that God is not just in an arbitrary location. He is up there. He is up above. This cosmology of the heavens above and the earth below is programmed into our spiritual DNA. Even though almost none of us have been taught this, unless you grew up in a wise family, we all understand it at our deepest levels. What you have just seen now is the Quranic case for the flat earth, which evidently is unassailable, the documentation for the standard of the model of creation. That's pretty much all I want to read to you there. And I'm going to mention to you a few more verses that come into my mind. I don't know the exact quotation, but just, people will think that the angels are this metaphysical ghost. No, they're not. God describes they are literal physical beings. They are made of light. He says that these messengers have 2, 4, and 6 wings. They are physical. They are 8 that bear up the throne of God. People think that the afterlife, it's not a literal physical garden. It's this place where your metaphysical ghost is going to go and float and like dissolve and dissipate into the universe. This is nonsense. This is adopted from Greek metaphysics. God over and over describes the garden as physical. He says that, the believers are going to have a bunch of righteous virgin wives. He says that we're going to literally eat physical fruit, and we're going to be like, this is what we ate before. This is similar to what we ate before. It's going to all be physical. It's going to be sunlight, and then there will be shade, where we can retreat to. Every single description of the garden is physical, according to the Quran. Okay, hell as well, the fire. It's not a place like this underworld, this chamber that your ghost is going to float down to and be in this like eternal state of limbo, wandering nowhere with no aim. No, it's a physical place where people are going to be tortured eternally. And some people say, well, how are you going to be tortured eternally? God makes it very clear. He says in the Quran that as their skins are going to be burned off by the fire, and they're going to keep regenerating. So they're going to be in a state of they're not going to ever die. They're going to continue regenerating and being burned. It's going to be a physical torture. The angels will be dragging their faces in the fire. They're going to be whipped and lashed by the keepers of hell. The whole ideology of the Quran, it is completely divorced from and separate from the Greek metaphysics that people believe in. The soul in the Quran, I'll go over this in a separate part of the book. The soul is not some ghost inside of me, which is my true self, the metaphysical. It's all it is. It's referring to the free agency capacity of the created being. That's it. The choice making capacity. It's not some ghost. We need to get this Greek metaphysics out of our mind. I know you might have been taught this by your mosque. I know you might have been taught this by your school of thought, but it is not within the Quran. I have proved this exhaustively. God himself is a physical being. The angels are physical. Everything in this world is physical. We are materialists. Not in the sense of like, we're consumerists, because people often associate the two. We are materialists in that the only reality we acknowledge is a physical reality, not a non-physical reality. The word non-physical reality doesn't appear once in the Quran. That should tell you enough. These Greek philosophers, they'll go, excuse me, they'll go on and on about non-physical realities and incorporeal reality, the thing in and of itself, the doctrine of substance, the debate between the pluralists and the monists, and the incorporeal reality. This is not even said once. The word incorporeal reality does not exist within the Quran. Incorporeal reality is a meaningless term. It is purely apophatic. Okay, so that has been sufficiently demonstrated, and now this is really for my audience as well as Drake. God willing, he can see this, and he can see that the Quran does not teach Neoplatonism. This was produced preemptively before he decides to levy his criticisms against the last and final testament of the Most High. Next, I am going to deal with maybe some objections that certain people who call themselves Muslims may bring up, certain verses within the Quran that they're going to use as excuses to introduce their metaphysics, okay? And what you have to understand with these objections is you can't view any Quranic verse within a vacuum. You have to view it all within the context of what the Quran has laid out. I have given you a plethora of verses in this sermon or lesson or whatever you want to call it, in this exposition, showing very clearly graphic, explicit examples of God's physical form. So when people bring this up, they can't, or like particular verses, they can't artificially emphasize these and then completely discount everything else the Quran says. It has to be viewed in light of the whole Quran. And even then, these verses, they explain themselves. So the first one that comes to my mind is chapter 6, verse 103, where God says, "Vision comprehends him not, but he comprehends vision. He is the subtle, the aware." And in this verse, it's not talking about Greek metaphysics. There's nothing being said here of a non-physical reality, an incorporeal reality. This is simply saying vision comprehends him not, but he comprehends vision. And my understanding of this is related to the theophany upon Mount Sinai. So when Moses asked to see the essence of God, and God showed it to him, and although Moses didn't see it because the mountain collapsed, nonetheless, God showed his essence, and Moses was not able to comprehend it. It's not that he's non-physical. It's that he is too brilliant, too glorious, too powerful, too amazing, too much to handle, that our vision literally cannot handle him. It is too much, but he comprehends vision. So this is not any metaphysical statement. This is referring to God being gloriously brilliant and powerful, and referring to the fact that we if we were to see him, we would be utterly blown away. And this, like I said, this goes back to this goes back to the story of Moses on Mount Sinai when he saw God and the whole mountain collapsed. And as far as my understanding of the Quran, God can't come down here. He can't come down to the earth. Firstly, because he's way bigger than the earth. We know his throne alone overspreads all of the heavens and the earth. He can't fit here. It's too small for him. And also, if he were to try to, based on my understanding of that story of Moses, he would destroy this whole place. He has a special home for him, which is the highest heaven. That is his. It's all his, of course, but he dwells in the highest heaven. That is the place where he resides. And if he were to come to the earth, it would just completely wipe everything out from existence. It would just flatten everything. The next verse people might bring up as an objection is chapter 58, verse 7, where God says, "Dost thou not see that God knows what is in the heavens and what is in the earth? There is no private conversation of three, save he is their fourth, nor of five, save he is their sixth, nor of less than that, nor of greater, save he is with them wherever they may be. Then will he inform them of what they did on the day of resurrection. God knows all things." So when God is saying that he is there, their fourth or their fifth or their sixth, that no private conversation happens except that he knows it, this is not saying that God's essence is literally contained within your room. Once again, Mount Sinai. God showed himself to Moses. Even the mountain itself couldn't handle it. So what's your room going to do? Your room can't handle God, obviously. What this is referring to is that God knows all things. That's why the verse ends with that. God knows all things. It's referring to the fact that he is there, knowing the whispering in your heart, knowing the confidential conversation. It's referring to the knowledge of all things that belongs to God. Not necessarily his essence being sitting with you on your couch. That's just nonsense. So this is, again, not a introduction of Greek metaphysics. This is referring to the knowledge that God has of all things. And finally, the last verse that somebody might bring as an objection is chapter 50, verse 16, where God says, "And we have created man, and we know what is his soul whispers within him, and we are nearer to him than the jugular vein. When the two recorders sitting on the right and on the left, he utters not a word, save with him is a watcher ready." So it's interesting because, this is not telling us that God is within our throat. God is not in our jugular vein. God mentions how he's really talking about the two recorders here that are sitting on the right and on the left side of us that are recording everything. And God is just giving us a very intimate, graphic example of how close he is to us in knowledge. He comprehends every last thing that we think, every sentiment we have, every feeling that we harbor, everything that we think is secret. He knows. Why? Because these recorders are recording it. And he's just giving us an intimate example of this by saying he's closer to us in the jugular vein. This is not talking about God's essence in our throat. Okay? This is talking simply about, again, his knowledge of all things. And just to reinstantiate the whole point, all of these verses, you must view them within the context of every other verse that we have read. I have given an exhaustive and comprehensive treatise, a comprehensive dealing of this subject, showing very clearly God has a concrete physical essence, and we must view these verses within that light and within that context. So, no, there is no Greek metaphysics. No, there is no incorporeal reality. This is a foreign pagan religion that people have introduced in the doctrine and become obsessed with. I don't know why they brought this up. People seem to think that this understanding of God is somehow impure, making him a physical entity, that this is not holy enough. It has to be beyond the physical world. But this is their own presumption. This is their own assumption. And God makes it very clear that assumption suffices nothing against the truth, and that these people have no knowledge of the unseen. They have no knowledge of these things whatsoever, but they claim that they do. This comes from this secular tradition from Greek philosophy where men think that by abstracting and mentally masturbating for long enough, they can have knowledge of the unseen, when God makes it very clear there is no knowledge of the unseen. The only knowledge we have of the unseen is what he has revealed to us in the scriptures. But anyways, that is my presentation, and I hope that it has been a blessing to you, ladies and gentlemen.
Assalamu alaikum, men. My name is Walid Naeem, and I have dedicated my entire life towards spreading the truth about the words of God. And I don't know about you, but personally, I have grown sick and tired of all these mainstream religions, and specifically the mosques, which have utterly failed us. I'm fed up with them placing the words of man, specifically their fabricated hadiths, at a higher authority than God's holy scriptures, their lack of knowledge about conspiracy facts and realpolitik, and their complete ignorance of the true nature of our earth. I've had enough of their compromise, their weakness, their lame sermons which put people to sleep, their virtue signaling, their fear of facing any real persecution, and their willingness to let the quote-unquote secular atheist utterly trample over them. The atheists own all of the educational boards and teach their propaganda to every so-called Muslim and quote-unquote non-Muslim child here in the West. And now with the Toyota Corolla hoax, the atheist has successfully broken apart our communities and made us utter slaves to their government. Our so-called quote-unquote Muslim sons are a bunch of wannabe hood rat gangsters who vape, drink, smoke weed, and party like animals. And our so-called quote-unquote Muslim daughters are not much different. They have no interest in hearing about the Word of God. They are all too busy YOLOing. This has all happened while the imams have been living very comfortably off of the hard-earned money of their community members in the donation bins. As stated before, I personally am completely fed up with this. The mosques have had all of the support, funding, enfranchisement, and time of our communities and have produced absolutely nothing. The atheist has made the so-called quote-unquote Muslim man his bitch. He has steamrolled him in every way possible. That is why I created Eyes Wide Open. This channel exists as a call to action for all of those strong believing men who trust in their Lord fully and refuse to compromise the Quran. It is time the true sons of Adam and the inheritors of the tremendous tradition, in other words, the true Quranic Muslims, to set up something for themselves and fearlessly stand up against the madness that is going on in the world. What you see with my channel right now is only the beginning. These short videos I make in my car are all that I have time for right now, working a full-time job. I scribble these together while at work and make these videos while running errands. But you ain't seen nothing yet. If God should will, I have so much more in store for Eyes Wide Open. I want this to be a platform for the believers. Just a couple of things I have planned for this channel is, firstly, creating scholarly books, documentaries, and essays to arm you guys with the intellectual firepower for dealing with all of our enemies. Secondly, I would like Eyes Wide Open to be a center for heavy activism, public and street preaching, going to City Hall, organizing protests, knocking doors, going to baseball, hockey, soccer, basketball, and other major sporting events and preaching to the people leaving the stadium, going to the totally failed mosques, synagogues, and churches and debating with their religious leaders, going to universities and debating the quote-unquote secular professors on their laughable so-called science, and much more. It's time the believers start to fight back and shake the cage of this disgusting system. My goal is to create a base for the believers. I want people to know of our name, that there are dedicated, zealous, and studious men who do not compromise the word of God, and we are ready to take action. If we keep waiting for our mosque to do something about the real problems of this world, then we will be waiting until Judgment Day. We need to create something now from the ground up. With that being said, may God bless us in all of our endeavors and guide us every step of the way. If this sounds like something you are interested in, and if you want to be a part of the movement, then you can help me out. My Patreon and PayPal are linked in the description of every video, and, God willing, if enough generous believers decide to fund this platform, then I can quit my full-time job and look for something part-time, or, even better than that, leave employment completely, which will give me more hours in the day to do this work. I do not care to be rich. All of that stuff is vanity anyways. But the fact of the matter is, my wife and I need to eat and have a roof over our heads. So, if you wish to support the cause, then I thank you sincerely for that and promise to fight with might and main in the cause of God for the believers. If you are not able to, hey, then I totally understand. Find somebody else who needs that money and give it to them. Give it out of fear of your Lord and in dread of that great and terrible day, which is coming to all of us. For all of the believers out there, the brothers and sisters who follow hard upon the truth, all I can say is much love to each and every one of you. May God reward you in this life and the hereafter. Praise goes to God alone. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Peace.